Today is Tuesday, the 13th of October, 2020, and this is a regularly scheduled town board meeting. First order of business is roll call. Mrs. Green?
Just stand by a minute here. She's going, okay. Hang on, Joseph, she's almost in position.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess it was roll call and Joe Petty was up to you, Betty.
And I'm here.
Okay. Good evening. Mr. Ruggiero?
Present.
Mr. Manley?
Here.
Mr. Lobiondo?
Here.
And Mr. Piaquadio.
Here,
Okay, everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
States of America
and to the
republic
for
which
which
stands
which stands
one nation
under God,
liberty and
indivisible,
justice.
with liberty and justice for
justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Supervisor, are there any changes to the agenda?
I have no changes, Mr. Petty.
I have none.
Okay,
Nothing.
next we go on to item 5.
Okay, good. Is he unmuted if we need him? Okay.
Next we go on to item 5, approval of audit.
Looking for a motion to approve this audit in the amount of $1,427,457.43.
I'll make it.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, who made that motion, please?
Scott did.
Thank you. And Mrs. Green, you seconded.
Yes,
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 6, scheduling of public hearings. The first public hearing that needs to be scheduled is the preliminary town budget for 2021.
All right, and I think that it would be convenient for October 26th at 7:00 p.m. So I want to make that motion.
So be.
second,
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next item B, special district assessment roles, benefit formulas, and budgets for 2021.
All right, so that makes that 7:15 p.m. on the 26th. I'm going to make that motion.
I'll make the motion. I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next public hearing will be for introductory local law 5 for 2020 for records retention.
This will actually be the last public hearing of the night, so I'm going to make it for 7:35 on the 26th p.m. So I want to
So
make that
moved.
motion.
so move,
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
And the last public hearing is introductory local law 6 of 2020 for Roston Hills Sewer District rate for 2021.
All right, so that will be at 7:30 on October 26th. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
That was Councilman Manley who made that
Yes.
motion? Thank you. A second, please.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 7 for the Justice Court. Resolution of support for the Justice Court Assistance Program.
All right, and we apply for this grant every year, and the Justice Court's very good at putting it together. It's a JCAP grant. And this resolution shows support from the town board for this grant. So if someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second your motion.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 8 for the Recreation Department. Item A, approval to hire a part-time laborer.
All right, so James Pursuti, our Commissioner of Parks and Recreation, is recommending we hire a Michael Panesi as a recreation laborer at an hourly rate of $12.50 an hour with a starting date on or after October 26th, 2020. So someone, and that's based on the background check and physical. I mean, we want to make that motion.
so move.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next item, also under Recreation, request to hire architectural design firm.
All right, again, the request coming from James Pursuti, and this would be, give him the process to go out and look for an architectural design firm. And this would be actually for our recreation center, which we've been looking for many years and had many different opportunities and locations. But this is a design for the building itself and probably a cost estimate. So does someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
May I have a second, please?
second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yeah, we already had a building designed, correct? Didn't we do some design before?
Well, you're going back many years though, Paul, actually. I think that was going to be at the Little League field way back when. And I
Okay,
think
I thought we did
so.
something with the property over on North Plank Road.
I don't think we ever really had a building design. That's something that Pursuti will look into as well, to see what we've got.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero, Councilman Ruggiero,
He's muted. Oh, he's
Yes.
unmuted.
thank you. Councilman Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 9 for the Police Department. Approval to hire 3 full-time officers. The first officer is Yvonne Longinot.
Yeah, so Yvonne is currently a part-time officer, but he was on the list and we were able to hire him as a full-time officer as a replacement, which we so need. So this would be in accordance with the PBA contract with a starting date of October 19th of 2020. And he will be a title of police officer. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion for Evan Longinot.
And I'll second it. I'll second.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
The next officer is Austin Joyce.
Okay, once again, hired off the list in accordance with the starting salary in accordance with the PBA contract, starting date of October 19th of 2020. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second your motion.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piacquadio.
Yes.
And the third officer is Officer Matthew Ragney.
Okay, so once again, hiring off the list in accordance with the BBA contract with a proposed hire date of October 19th of 2020. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piacquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 10 for code compliance, approval to hire part-time clerk.
All right, so Jerry Canfield, our code compliance officer, is looking to hire Melissa B. Marcello as a code compliance clerk on a part-time basis at a rate of $12.50 per hour with a proposed hire date of October 19, 2020, based on her background check and physical. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Okay.
second it.
Paul seconded it.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piacquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 11 for the Highway Department, leaf and brush pickup.
All right, so Mark Hall, our highway superintendent, is suggesting we have the fall leaf and brush pickup, which is usually the week before Thanksgiving. And the pickup will be for the week of November 16th through the 19th. And then the 20th will be for calls. So I'm going to ask the board to approve this, and I'll ask the clerk to advertise it as well. Someone want to make that motion?
So move.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piacquadio.
Yes.
Next item is item 12 for the town supervisor for the Halloween proclamation.
All right, and this, of course, is a proclamation that a supervisor has done every year. It really doesn't need board approval. And it was a little bit of a, had to think this one through a little bit. Some towns had canceled Halloween completely. I can't see doing that because we basically would be doing something we could never enforce. But I will read this off as far as the Halloween curfew for this year. The town of Newburgh is concerned with the safety and welfare of our children, along with the protection of private property. I hereby proclaim a townwide curfew on door-to-door trick-or-treating and other outdoor Halloween-related activities. The curfew will run from 9:00 p.m. until 6:00 a.m., starting on Friday, October 30th through Saturday, October 1st, 2020. I'm requesting that parents inform their children and supervise the implementation of the townwide curfew so we may avoid problems and for the safety, health, and welfare of our town's young people and property owners. And please take all covert precautions, and that will be signed by me as of this October 13th, 2020. So that's it for me on that one. Thank you.
Thank
Joe,
you.
we can go on.
Next, we go on to item 13 for the engineering department. The first item, A, Elmhurst Avenue Culvert, approval to authorize attorney for the town to prepare resolution for project financing.
All right, so what Joe said right there will be the motion. Does someone want to make that motion? It's on the,
I'll make the motion.
And I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero, Mr.
Yes.
Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item B, change order for Roston Hills Sewer Project electrical contract.
All right, in this one, we're really going to extend the amount of days from 120 to 252 days. And that's for Jury Excavating, who's the general contractor. And there was, during the culvert thing for a while in February, March, we couldn't work. It was only just necessary or vital work. Then later it was ruled that this was that. So, but still, if we go along with that extension, and I understand it's operational. So someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll
I'll
second.
second your motion.
That was a tie. I'll go with Councilman Lobiondo. Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item C, Chadwick Lake Filter Plant, approval to upgrade hardware and software.
All right, this is again, hardware and software for operation of the plant, the Chadwick Lake Filter Plant. In the past, we have a system in place already, a SCADA system. And GHD had done it the last time, the engineering firm. And what we're looking for is to ask our engineer to ask the engineering firm for the necessary documents and oversee the installation and complete the system for the SCADA programming system. Now, just so we know, this might cost as much as $200,000. But at this point, we're just asking GHD to give us some estimates on their part of the project. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'm sorry, who made that motion, please?
Paul did. I'll second it.
I did.
Was that Councilman Ruggiero? I apologize.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Yes, it
you.
was, Joe.
Thank you. And Councilman Lobiondo, you seconded?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Any other further discussion? Mrs. Green,
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item D, CBPS Stormwater Security.
All right, and this is actually coming from Pat Hines, who's engineer for the town. And this is stormwater security for CBPS in the amount of $70,658 even. So does someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item E, environmental audit for Desmond Estate.
All right, as most know, we're going through the process of trying to purchase the Desmond Estate with the Kaplan grant that we got recently for $1 million, $700,000 to purchase the property, $300,000 for maintenance over the next 3 years. But we do want to do an environmental study or a phase 1 study. And we did secure about 2 proposals. But this is again coming from Patrick Hines, who's engineer for the town. And he's recommending here, it's just based on the review of the proposals and the fact that the town has utilized the services of Chazen Companies in the past. I recommend that the town board authorizes the Chazen Companies to prepare the phase 1 environmental site assessment. The Chazen Companies fee is $2,675. We have used them before on Hudson Plaza when that building was donated to us. So if someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the
Make
I'll
motion.
the
make the
motion.
motion.
A second, please.
I'll
Second.
You can give me the first.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piacquadio.
Yes.
Last item for engineering is Crossroads Sewer District, a budget transfer.
All right, and this again came from James Osborne, the town engineer. And he's asking to transfer $87,500 from the interim transfer line to the consultant's line. And he says it's necessary to cover costs associated with contracted personnel services to the Crossroads Sewer District. So someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
May I have a
I'll
second,
second it.
please? Thank you.
I'll second, Jim.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piacquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to the Zoning Board of Appeals, appointment of new committee member.
All right, the board conducted interviews this evening, in fact, a little bit earlier. There were 3 very qualified candidates, but the board seems to me they're going with Greg Hermes Sr. to fill a ZBA board position vacated by Peter Olympia. So this position will be good until December 31st of 2023. Does someone want to make that motion?
So move.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piacquadio.
Yes.
Okay, next we go on to item 15 for announcements.
Betty, you have any announcements?
I have one sad to say. The Cumnor Valley Ladies Auxiliary, because of the virus, has canceled their election day dinner.
Paul, you have any comments?
Nothing.
Scott?
No, I don't have anything tonight.
Okay. Anthony?
Nothing. Thank you.
My only thing is like stay safe, masks, wash your hands, and don't drop that procedure. Just keep it going. It seems like boring after a while, but I think we might be able to keep the numbers down, hopefully. So
Okay,
with that, we could open it to,
public
Joe, we
hearing.
can open it to public announcements. So Bobby, do you want to handle that section?
Yeah, looks like we have 5 people from the public. The first would be Bill Feder.
Okay, so Bill, you have anything?
Good evening, everybody. A couple of questions. One, is there any thought of trying to combine the newly envisioned rec center with the Desmond campus and make it one unified operation, whether that be an expansion or a second building?
Well, I could tell you this, Bill, that we did think about it, and it is a good idea. Here's what if and when we do take over the Desmond Estate, a number of our senior programs will be there. So this might be able to construct a smaller building. Maybe originally it was 35,000 square feet. It might only be half the size.
Right.
So by
Right.
consolidating over it. To
Okay.
build another building at Desmond, I don't think would go, really. So to match the contour there. But
Okay.
and I got to apologize that you came out tonight, unfortunately,
Well,
because the original publication said you could. It was open, but these are like
Right,
interviews, so
right.
it couldn't be.
Well,
Sorry for
A lot happened in that time, so.
that.
The second question, the transfer, the budget transfer for the Crossroads Sewer District, was that for consultant fees is the purpose? Jim Osborne?
Yes.
You moved money tonight. Is that for a
Yes.
particular project, or that's a year's salary for somebody for a consultant?
Is Jim out here tonight?
James, there's a James here. I'm not sure if it's.
I bet you that's,
Osborne.
that might, is that James Osborne? Let's see if it is.
I asked him to unmute, so.
Can you hear me?
We
Yes.
can hear you, Jim. Did you hear Bill Fetter's
Okay.
question?
I did. Our sewer department is staffed by 2 town employees and 1 employee from KMO Pollution Control. So the transfer there is to cover the expenses for the KMO employee to assist our sewer department personnel.
Okay, that answers that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bill.
Have a good night.
You too. Anybody else, Bobby?
Darren Scales was here, but I'm not sure.
I don't think, Darren is listening in, but I don't think he has any
Yeah.
comments, I bet. Okay,
I have no comments. Thank you very much.
and thank you.
Here we have Greg Senior, who just joined now. I think that's the zoning appointment person, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
All right, and congratulations to you too.
And then the last is a phone number, 1-845-800-1986. If you have any questions, you can unmute.
So if that person has a question with that phone number,
Yeah,
You're
they're
welcome.
staying muted, so I think that wraps it up. Oh, no, here they are.
I don't hear anything.
Yeah, they unmuted, but
Hello?
Okay. Yes, you have a question
I'm
for the
sorry.
board or a comment?
Yes, I did. My name's Jennifer Higginson. I'm from Fusco Engineering, and I'm representing CBPS Realty. And I know that you guys had approved the stormwater security, but there was also a landscape security. I didn't know that if that needed to be approved as well.
It usually does. Jim, are you still there?
I
Osborne?
am. I didn't
I-
see the document. I didn't see the documentation for the landscape security, but it does require town board approval.
Okay.
So we'll be able
All
to
right.
do that on the 26th, hopefully, if we get the information.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
that's it.
So with that, we'll look at a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Second,
Motion made and seconded to adjourn at 7:28 PM. Any, Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Lobiondo,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes. All right,
Even if-
thank you. Thank you, everyone. I was usually say get home safe, but you're already home.
We're home
Okay.
already.
Yeah.
Not
All right,
me.
good night. Good
Good night,
night.
everybody.
All right.
Night.